30 years after its release, Martin Campbell recalls last-minute castings and self-doubts that came with reinventing 007 for the 1990s era. There was uncertainty as to whether Bond still worked. Few modern filmmakers can claim that they've made movie history, but Martin Campbell can say he's done it twice. The New Zealand native and accomplished action director is the only person to ever helm the first chapters in two different actors' tenure as Bond. James Bond. In 2004, Campbell was tapped by veteran producers Barbara Broccoli and Michael W. Wilson to launch Daniel Craig's first outing as James Bond, 2000 SIX's Casino Royale. He accomplished this 9 years after rejuvenating the then-dormant franchise with Pierce Brosnan's first 007 film, 1995's GoldenEye. The latter, released November 17, 1995, saw Brosnan's dashing Bond struggling to stop his former colleague and friend, 006/Alec Trevelyan, Sean Bean, from using a deadly Russian satellite's EMP capabilities to throw the world back into the Stone Age. Prior to GoldenEye, Brosnan famously inked a deal to play Bond in 1987's The Living Daylights. But at the last minute his contract for NBC and MTM's Remington Steele was renewed and the coveted role went to Timothy Dalton. GoldenEye influenced Casino in that it showcased Campbell's seemingly effortless approach to crafting blockbuster-friendly set pieces with gritty, kinetic visuals. His particular dynamic visual style was, at that point, something the Bond franchise had never really done before. He and his team, including longtime cinematographer Phil Miho, also put that action through a character-first lens, ensuring that every victory Bond earns or blow he takes feels like one of our own. But, at the time, there was no guarantee Campbell and his collaborators' exciting take on the first Bond film of the 90s was going to be celebrated 30 years later, let alone succeed on opening day. There was uncertainty as to whether Bond still worked. Campbell tells The Hollywood Reporter in an interview celebrating GoldenEye's 30th anniversary. The studio was budget-conscious. They often asked, did anybody want to go see it? Was Bond relevant anymore? The answer would turn out to be a resounding yes, as Campbell's film ranked, domestically, as one of the 10 highest-grossing films of 1995. It also earned $356.4 million worldwide on a budget of $58 million, according to Campbell. But the road to that success was a struggle, due to a protracted lawsuit between Studio MGM and other stakeholders over the franchise, one that put a 6-year gap between when audiences could get their Bond fix on the big screen. Timothy Dalton's second and final outing for Her Majesty's Secret Service, 1989's License to Kill, performed poorly at the summer box office that year. Critics and audiences were soft on the violent film's darker and more grounded take, a take that they would, ironically, later embrace in Casino Royale. The lengthy lawsuit, plus Kill's box office shortcomings, allowed what Campbell acknowledges as a course correction for the franchise when he came on board. One of Campbell's first creative conversations was a critical one. Who would play James Bond? It had to be Pierce, Campbell says. Barbara and Michael's father, the late Albert "Cubby" Broccoli, had the final say in recasting their lead role, as the Broccolis seemed to want Dalton to return. But in a meeting with MGM, it was Cubby who decided to go with Brosnan. So, with Brosnan officially enlisted to strap on the shoulder-holstered Walther PPK, Campbell and his producers turned their attention to the script. 4 writers, 3 credited, would work on the film in total. The first draft I saw was from writer Michael France, Campbell says. It was very heavy. Michael is someone who writes every beat of action, down to the close-up of a trigger, and he is very good at it. But the whole thing, though, I struggled with that first draft. After having Jeffrey Kane come on for a rewrite, with the screenwriter adding the prologue that introduced Bond and 006 on a past mission, the script still required some finessing. So the filmmakers received help from a surprising choice. We brought in the writer who wrote Working Girl for Mike Nichols, Kevin Wade, Campbell recalls. He came in and really helped break the back of the script. He did a very good job restructuring it and added some very good scenes. He was only contracted for 1 month, I believe because that's all we could afford, and he did a good job. He was uncredited, but he knew that going in and agreed to it. The first draft I saw was from writer Michael France, Campbell says. It was very heavy. Michael is someone who writes every beat of action, down to the close-up of a trigger, and he is very good at it. But the whole thing, though, I struggled with that first draft. After having Jeffrey Kane come on for a rewrite, with the screenwriter adding the prologue that introduced Bond and 006 on a past mission, the script still required some finessing. So the filmmakers received help from a surprising choice. We brought in the writer who wrote Working Girl for Mike Nichols, Kevin Wade, Campbell recalls. He came in and really helped break the back of the script. He did a very good job restructuring it and added some very good scenes. He was only contracted for 1 month, I believe because that's all we could afford, and he did a good job. He was uncredited, but he knew that going in and agreed to it. We wanted to make it as vicious and as tough as possible to watch these two go at one another. Both men extremely skilled, both lethal. Pierce and Sean worked really hard on that fight with the stunt team. They wanted to do it themselves, they did it themselves, which is unusual when you're shooting that close, in a very tight and confined space. It's very difficult to double, obviously. Especially the way the fight was choreographed, it meant that you see quite a lot of their faces. But I was lucky to have those actors, and have Bond be up against someone from his past, an equal, a friend, which I think helped up the stakes there. Campbell also considers himself lucky not just for being able to helm 2 pivotal and beloved films in Hollywood's longest-running franchise, but for also getting a chance to do it with Broccoli and Wilson. GoldenEye was a formative experience for both Campbell and his producers, with the latter essentially taking over the franchise from Cubby with this installment. In 2025, the veteran producers left the franchise and it is now currently overseen for Amazon/MGM by Amy Pascal and David Heyman, with Dune's Denis Villeneuve set to helm Bond 26. Barbara and Michael were terrific on both GoldenEye and Casino Royale, praises Campbell. Because they let you make the film. I mean, they don't really interfere hardly at all. Obviously, in the script process, they're very involved. But in the making of the film, they let you do it and you get an amazing amount of freedom. That creative freedom also extended to what audiences got to see released in theaters. I can honestly say that, in both of my movies, what you saw was my cut, basically. I had no pressure from them to cut them differently. In fact, they tended to have control over the studio in terms of the usual studio notes and which ones they would listen to or say, leave it as is, which was great. They were fantastic producers, they really were.